I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you personally for all the wonderful messages of support and for your understanding.
When DNA test results landed on Kate Middleton's desk, the shock was so profound, she reportedly collapsed. What she discovered about Archie and Lilibet would shake the very foundations of the royal family. Years of whispers, amended birth certificates, and hidden records suddenly made horrifying sense. The truth had been buried in palace archives.
But I just wanted to make a few opening remarks, if I may this morning.
Protected by layers of protocol and silence. But now, as Buckingham Palace confirms the unthinkable, the world is about to learn what really happened behind those golden gates. Buckingham Palace has always been a place of carefully guarded secrets, but in late 2024, something unprecedented happened. Documents began to surface, whispers turned into conversations, and suddenly the world was asking questions that the royal family seemed reluctant to answer. At the center of it all were two children, Archie and Lilibet, the son and daughter of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. What started as quiet speculation about their official status within the royal family had grown into something far more significant, touching on questions of tradition, constitutional protocol, and the very future of the monarchy itself. The story really begins in May 2019, when Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor entered the world. His arrival should have been a moment of pure celebration, another royal baby to delight the public and carry on the family legacy. But almost immediately, people noticed that something was different. There was no traditional photo opportunity on the hospital steps, no easel placed outside Buckingham Palace announcing the birth with all the formal royal seals and signatures. These weren't just quaint customs, they were rituals that had been followed for generations, visible symbols of how the monarchy presents itself to the world. Even more puzzling was what happened with Archie's birth certificate. The original document listed his mother as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. But just a few months later, that certificate was quietly amended. The changes removed Meghan's first names, leaving only her title. Palace officials insisted this was merely a clerical correction, nothing more than routine administrative housekeeping. But royal observers weren't convinced. In an institution where every word and gesture carries meaning, where protocol has been refined over centuries, such changes rarely happen without reason. The situation became even more complex in June 2021, when Lilibet Diana was born. Not in London, not anywhere in the United Kingdom, but in California. The choice of location was significant in ways that went far beyond simple geography. By having their daughter on American soil, Harry and Meghan were making a statement about how they wanted to raise their children. They had stepped back from royal duties, relocated across the Atlantic, and were building a life deliberately separate from the constraints and expectations of palace life. This presented the monarchy with a genuine puzzle. Throughout its long history, the institution has been built on certain foundational principles. Bloodlines matter, records matter. Knowing exactly where everyone fits in the line of succession matters. The royal family isn't just a family in the way most people understand the term. It's a constitutional entity with legal standing, formal protocols, and a role in the governance of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. Harry and Meghan had made it clear they wanted privacy for their children. They wanted Archie and Lilibet to grow up as normal kids, not as public figures constantly under scrutiny. This is completely understandable from a parental perspective. But privacy and royalty have always existed in tension with each other. How do you maintain detailed official records while respecting a family's wish for a private life? How do you include children in the formal structures of monarchy when their parents have chosen to live outside those structures? These weren't just theoretical questions. They had real implications for how the monarchy functions and how it presents itself to the public. The royal family operates on the basis of clear hierarchies and well-defined roles. Everyone knows where they stand, what their responsibilities are, and how they relate to the institution as a whole. But Archie and Lilibet occupied a strange middle ground. They were undeniably royal by blood, grandchildren of the king, yet they were being raised an ocean away, outside the daily rhythms of palace life, without the titles and public roles that might normally come with their position. Some people argued this was perfectly fine, even healthy. Why shouldn't royal children be allowed a more normal upbringing? Why must every descendant of the monarch be trapped in the same rigid system? others worried about the precedent being set. If some royal children can opt out while still maintaining their connection to the family, where do you draw the line? What happens to the idea of royal duty and service if people can pick and choose which parts of royal life they want to participate in? The christening of Archie had already raised eyebrows. It was a private ceremony, with no public guest list and no official photographs released at the time. This was a sharp departure from tradition. Royal christenings are usually semi-public affairs, with official photos shared and godparents announced. The privacy surrounding Archie's baptism led to immediate speculation. Who were his godparents? Why the secrecy? Was the family hiding something, or simply trying to establish boundaries? When Lilibet was born 2 years later, there were similar questions about whether and how she would be formally recognized within the royal framework. Would there be a christening at all? Would it follow royal protocol or California customs? Every decision Harry and Meghan made was scrutinized for what it might reveal about their relationship with the rest of the family and their children's place in the royal hierarchy. Behind all of this was a deeper question about what it means to be royal in the modern world. The monarchy has survived for over 1,000 years by adapting to changing circumstances while maintaining core traditions. But this particular situation was genuinely new. Never before had senior royals stepped back from their duties, moved to another country, and tried to raise their children with one foot in the royal world and one foot out of it. The palace found itself in an awkward position. Ignore the ambiguity, and you risk letting the official records become unclear or inaccurate. Address it too directly, and you risk appearing punitive toward family members who had already been through very public difficulties. The situation called for careful handling, the kind of delicate navigation that royal institutions have had to master over centuries of managing family drama while maintaining public dignity. As 2024 progressed, it became increasingly clear that something would have to give. The questions weren't going away. If anything, they were multiplying. What would happen as Archie and Lilibet grew older? Would they have titles? Would they be expected to perform royal duties? How would their unique position be explained to the public and recorded in official documents? The monarchy needed answers, and those answers would require making some difficult decisions about tradition, family, and the future of the institution itself. When Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, the nation mourned the loss of a monarch who had reigned for 70 years. But beyond the public grief and elaborate state funeral, her passing created a complex set of challenges for her successor. King Charles inherited not just the crown, but a monarchy facing questions it had never quite confronted before. The issues surrounding Harry and Meghan's children were just one part of a larger puzzle about what the modern royal family should look like and how it should function. According to sources close to the palace, one of Charles's early priorities as king was to bring order to the institution's internal workings. This wasn't about punishment or settling scores. It was about ensuring that the monarchy's records accurately reflected reality. Over the years, various ceremonies, titles, and designations had accumulated in ways that weren't always consistent or clear. If the institution was going to survive and remain relevant, it needed to know exactly who was who and what role everyone played. This led to what insiders began calling the Royal Records Review. It wasn't announced with fanfare or press releases. Instead, it was described as a quiet modernization effort, a way of bringing the palace's extensive archives into better alignment with contemporary needs. Every baptism record was examined, every title and style was reviewed, every entry in the official succession documents was checked and rechecked for accuracy and consistency. The review was methodical and thorough. Palace archivists worked their way through centuries of documentation, comparing different sources and resolving discrepancies. In most cases, this was straightforward administrative work. But when the review reached the Sussex family, things became considerably more complicated. Here were two children with clear royal lineage, yet their circumstances didn't fit neatly into any existing category. The tension was apparent to anyone paying attention. Was this review about accuracy and modernization, as the king's advisors insisted? Or was it something more pointed, a way of asserting control over family members who had chosen to step away? Those close to Charles maintained that his intentions were purely procedural. The monarchy is an ancient institution that survives through careful record-keeping, through ritual and recognition. If the records aren't clear, confusion follows. And confusion, in an institution that depends on clear lines of authority and succession, can be genuinely dangerous. The situation escalated when a memo dated October 28th began circulating among journalists and royal watchers. The document itself was brief and technical, but its implications were significant. It suggested that verification requests had been sent to the Archbishop of Canterbury's office regarding Archie's christening and Lilibet's blessing. The palace, following its usual practice in sensitive matters, declined to comment. But in the world of royal protocol, silence often communicates as much as any official statement. The verification process itself was painstaking. Baptismal certificates from Lambeth Palace, the official residence of the Archbishop of Canterbury, were cross-referenced against private documents held in Windsor's archives. This wasn't about questioning whether Archie and Lilibet were Harry and Meghan's children. Their lineage was never in doubt. The question was more subtle and more complex. It was about status, about how these children should be officially categorized within the royal system. Could two children being raised in California, thousands of miles from any royal residence, still be considered full members of the official royal register? Should they be? These questions might sound arcane, but they touch on fundamental issues about how the monarchy works. The institution has spent centuries developing elaborate systems for tracking succession, for determining who has what rights and responsibilities. Those systems have guided the crown through wars, constitutional crises, and dramatic social changes. But they were designed for a world where royal children grew up in royal palaces, not in Montecito mansions. Inside Buckingham Palace, opinions were divided. Some staff members reportedly argued that Archie and Lilibet's heritage entitled them to full recognition regardless of where they lived. Their blood connection to the king was undeniable. Erasing them from official records or downgrading their status would be both unfair and historically unprecedented. But others took a different view. They believed that Harry and Meghan's decision to leave royal life had created a situation that required formal definition. The children's parents had rejected royal duties and royal funding. Could the children still claim royal status while their parents maintained their distance from royal responsibilities? One courtier was reportedly overheard saying something that captured the core dilemma perfectly. You're either in the system or outside it. This wasn't meant as a threat or an ultimatum. It was a statement of practical reality. The royal system functions on the basis of clear definitions and mutual obligations. People who accept royal titles and positions also accept certain duties and constraints. People who reject those constraints typically also give up the formal recognition that comes with them. By early November, whispers began spreading that quiet adjustments had been made to the royal database. Nothing was announced publicly. No official confirmation was issued. But people close to the king indicated that changes had occurred. The nature of those changes remained unclear, deliberately so. The palace has always understood the value of strategic ambiguity, of letting people draw their own conclusions, while maintaining official discretion. Those same sources insisted that the adjustments weren't about cutting ties with Harry's children or diminishing their importance to the family. Instead, the goal was to bring clarity to a confusing situation. His Majesty wants peace, not punishment. One longtime palace insider told reporters, the king genuinely believed that having accurate, consistent records would benefit everyone in the long run, including Harry and Meghan themselves. But the timing of all this couldn't be ignored. The monarchy had been through a difficult period. Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein had caused enormous damage to the institution's reputation. There had been questions about palace finances, about how royal properties were managed, about various ceremonial and administrative practices. Charles had inherited a monarchy that was already under intense scrutiny, already facing calls to modernize and justify its continued existence. In that context, the records review looked like part of a larger project. The king seemed determined to run a tighter ship, to eliminate ambiguities, and establish clear standards. Some saw this as admirable leadership, the kind of decisive management the monarchy needed. Others worried it was too rigid, too focused on control at the expense of family relationships. The truth, as usual, was probably somewhere in between. The review wasn't just about Harry and Meghan's children. It touched on dozens of other minor royals, distant cousins, and historical figures whose exact status had never been completely clear. But because of the intense public interest in the Sussexes, that part of the review attracted disproportionate attention. Every rumored adjustment, every alleged memo, every anonymous quote from a palace source became fodder for intense speculation. What made the situation particularly delicate was that it involved children who had no say in any of these decisions. Archie was just 5 years old. Lilibet was 3. They hadn't chosen to be born into this complicated situation. They hadn't asked for their parents to leave royal life or for their grandfather to become king during a period of institutional upheaval. Yet decisions being made in palace offices would shape how they understood their own identity and their connection to one of the world's most famous families. The palace understood this, at least in principle, but institutions like the monarchy often struggle to balance their need for order and continuity against the human realities of the people caught up in their systems. Records and protocols and verification processes can seem cold and bureaucratic, even when they're intended to serve legitimate purposes. And for parents like Harry and Meghan, already feeling wounded by their treatment from the institution, anything that touched on their children was bound to feel deeply personal. Nobody expected what happened on that November evening. It was just after 9:45 in the evening, a time when most people in Britain were winding down their day, when suddenly something unusual occurred in the digital realm of royal record-keeping. The Royal Court Circular, a website that typically receives modest traffic and operates with the quiet reliability of a well-maintained clock, went completely dark. For 23 minutes, the page was simply unavailable. When the site came back online, visitors noticed something new at the very top of the page. A single entry had been added, written in the formal language that characterizes all official palace communications. Records pertaining to the Duke of Sussex's descendants are reviewed and aligned in accordance with protocol. Just those few words, carefully chosen and deliberately vague, but those words were enough to set off a chain reaction that would dominate news cycles on both sides of the Atlantic for days to come. Within minutes, social media platforms erupted. Hashtags related to royal records and palace updates began trending globally. People who rarely paid attention to royal news were suddenly sharing articles and offering opinions. The timing of the posting, late in the evening when most palace staff would have gone home, added an element of mystery. Had this been deliberately released after hours? Was someone trying to slip the announcement out quietly, hoping it would generate less attention? If so, the strategy backfired spectacularly. BBC news anchors interrupted their regular programming to discuss the development. In the United States, morning talk shows that were just getting started for the day immediately pivoted to cover the story. The phrasing of the announcement gave everyone just enough information to know something significant had happened, but not enough to understand exactly what. That ambiguity created space for endless speculation and interpretation. In Montecito, California, Harry and Meghan were reportedly going about their evening when they learned about the update the same way millions of other people did, by seeing it spread across the internet. Friends close to the couple used the word betrayed to describe their initial reaction. Here was a decision that directly affected their children, announced publicly without any prior consultation or warning. Whatever the palace's intentions, the execution felt like another example of the institution prioritizing protocol over family relationships. Prince Harry, according to people familiar with his response, tried to take a measured approach. "It's procedure, Meg, not war," he reportedly told his wife, urging her to see this as administrative business rather than a personal attack. But those same sources indicated that Harry was far from calm himself. Every decision that came from London seemed to carry echoes of old wounds, reminders of tensions that had never fully healed. The distance between California and Buckingham Palace wasn't just geographical. It was emotional, psychological, built on years of misunderstandings and unmet expectations. For Meghan, the situation felt particularly calculated. She had spent years dealing with what she perceived as the palace's tendency to use bureaucracy and procedure as weapons. Every leaked story, every carefully timed announcement, every adjustment to protocol seemed designed to assert control and remind her family who held the power. Whether or not that perception was accurate, it shaped how she interpreted events like this late-night update to the court circular. But what very few people outside the palace walls understood was how much darker and more complex the truth really was. The announcement that night was just the visible tip of a much larger process that had been unfolding behind closed doors for months. Decisions had been made, documents had been revised, and the official machinery of the monarchy had been working systematically to address questions that most of the public didn't even know existed. The morning of November 2nd brought an unusual tension to the grounds around Endinstance Well, Buckingham Palace. Staff members arriving for work sensed that something significant was happening, even if they didn't know all the details. Behind those golden gates and immaculately maintained gardens, the consequences of the previous night's announcement were becoming clear. What palace officials had hoped would be a quiet internal matter had exploded into an international story that showed no signs of dying down quickly. The single line that had been added to the court circular looked administrative, routine to anyone not versed in royal protocol, family records adjusted per tradition. But to a global audience that had been following the drama surrounding Harry and Meghan for years, it was dynamite. Every word was analysed and debated. What did adjusted mean exactly? Which records? And most importantly, what were the implications for Archie and Lilibet's status within the royal family? King Charles, maintaining his characteristic composure, had known this moment would eventually arrive. According to those who worked closely with him, the king believed deeply that the monarchy must stand on order and clear procedures, not on sentiment or personal feelings. The institution had survived for over 1,000 years by maintaining certain standards and keeping meticulous records. In an age where information spreads instantly and every claim can be fact-checked, uncertainty could be genuinely dangerous for the monarchy's credibility. Princess Anne, known for her direct manner and practical approach to royal duties, arrived at the palace without ceremony to offer her perspective. People close to her reported that she made a blunt point during internal discussions. You can't demand loyalty from the public if your own records aren't clear. Her argument was that silence and ambiguity don't protect the institution. They fuel speculation and allow misinformation to spread. Better to be clear and definitive, even if that clarity causes short-term discomfort. Prince William approached the situation with the measured restraint he had learned from both his mother and grandmother. He understood the public relations challenges involved and recognized that any response from the palace risked making things worse. His wife Catherine agreed with this cautious approach. Both of them had spent years carefully managing their public image and understood how quickly well-intentioned actions could be misinterpreted when every gesture was broadcast globally. Across the ocean, the atmosphere in the Sussex household was very different. Meghan was on the phone with lawyers before sunrise California time, her tone sharp with frustration and concern. "Why now?" she kept asking. "Why make these changes public at this particular moment?" She worried that even the slightest adjustment to official records might be used to cast doubt on her children's legitimate place in the royal lineage. Every decision from London seemed to carry hidden meanings and potential threats. Harry attempted to reach out discreetly to his father, hoping for some clarification or explanation. The response he received was formal and final. No clarification necessary. For Harry, this felt like another wall going up, another reminder that the palace operates by its own rules and timetables. The institution wasn't built for emotional exchanges or family heart-to-hearts. It communicated through official channels and carefully worded statements, not through the kind of open dialogue that might actually resolve the underlying tensions. Publicly, palace officials insisted that nothing of constitutional significance had changed. The statements they released emphasized continuity, tradition, and routine administrative processes. But behind those polished words and carefully timed press releases, a deeper and more complicated story was unfolding. What had been private family decisions and internal discussions were now playing out as a public spectacle, with millions of people watching and offering their interpretations. The phrase that kept circulating among royal watchers was that the monarchy was reasserting control. After years of watching Harry and Meghan chart their own course, after seeing them give interviews and write memoirs that challenged the institution's version of events, the palace had found a way to remind everyone where ultimate authority resided. This wasn't being done through dramatic confrontations or public feuds. It was being accomplished through the quiet, methodical updating of official records. By late November, the full picture of what Buckingham Palace had accomplished was starting to come into focus. This wasn't just about updating a few administrative records or clarifying some minor points of protocol. The palace had quietly but unmistakably redrawn the boundaries of what it meant to be part of the royal family in the modern era. For the first time in recent memory, the monarchy had formally documented a generation that existed within the family tree, but outside the circle of active royal duty. The key distinction that emerged from all the careful wording and diplomatic phrasing was this: Archie and Lilibet would be recognized as royal by blood, but not by role. Their connection to the king was undeniable and would be properly recorded, but they would not carry the expectations, the titles, or the public responsibilities that typically came with being grandchildren of the reigning monarch. It was a careful balancing act, acknowledging their heritage while respecting their parents' wishes for a more private life. A brief but precisely worded entry appeared in the royal court circular that made this distinction official. The language was technical and deliberately understated, the kind of phrasing that palace lawyers and protocol officers had spent weeks perfecting. But the implications rippled outward far beyond the narrow world of royal record-keeping. This was a statement about the future of the monarchy itself, about how the institution would adapt to families that didn't fit traditional patterns. The entry indicated that certain members of the extended royal family would no longer carry titles or styles in the official sense. They would be treated with courtesy and respect, certainly. Their family connection would never be denied. But constitutional privilege, the formal standing that comes with being a working royal, would be reserved for those who actually performed royal duties. It was a clear-eyed recognition that the monarchy needed to become smaller and more focused if it was going to survive in the 21st century. Whispers among palace staff revealed genuine unease about these decisions. Behind closed doors, debates had raged for months about where to draw boundaries and how to honor both tradition and contemporary reality. Some courtiers had argued passionately that any recognition of royal blood should come with full acknowledgement and support. To do otherwise seemed petty and vindictive, a way of punishing children for their parents' choices. Others insisted that precedent mattered enormously. If you allowed some royals to opt out of duties while keeping their status, where would it end? What would stop the institution from becoming impossibly bloated, with distant relatives claiming royal privileges? The palace had never expected the level of scrutiny that followed. Public opinion split sharply. Supporters of King Charles praised what they saw as decisive leadership and necessary modernization. The monarchy couldn't afford to support dozens of minor royals who contributed nothing to national life. Being clear about who was in and who was out made practical and financial sense. But critics saw something darker at work. They perceived this as control dressed up as policy, a way of asserting institutional power over individuals who had dared to step away and build their own lives. Social media became a battlefield of interpretation. Every detail was dissected and debated. Hashtags ranged from those supporting royal clarity and tradition to those accusing the palace of cruelty toward children who had no say in any of these decisions. Royal commentators filed endless analysis pieces, many of them contradicting each other. Some claimed to have inside sources revealing months of careful planning. Others suggested the whole thing had been rushed through in response to recent media coverage. What became clear from various reports was that King Charles had prepared meticulously for this moment. He had consulted with constitutional experts, legal advisors, and even some distant relatives who might be affected by any new policies. The goal was to ensure that whatever was announced could withstand both immediate criticism and long-term historical analysis. Every word had been chosen carefully. Every possible objection had been anticipated and addressed. For the Sussex family watching from California, the emotional experience was complicated and painful. Harry felt a measure of relief that his children's names were being formally acknowledged and recorded. Whatever else happened, Archie and Lilibet would be documented as legitimate members of the royal lineage. No one could ever question their heritage or suggest they didn't belong to the family. But alongside that relief came deep frustration. Why hadn't he been consulted before these decisions were made public? Why did he have to learn about changes affecting his own children through news reports and social media posts? Meghan's response was less ambiguous. She perceived the entire process as a calculated assertion of power, the palace, reminding everyone who ultimately made the rules. The bureaucratic language and procedural justifications didn't soften the impact. If anything, they made it worse. At least an open confrontation would have been honest. This felt like being controlled through paperwork and official announcements, with no opportunity for dialogue or input. Friends close to Harry reported that he confided something particularly revealing during this period. "I didn't need a royal correction," he said. "I needed a royal connection." That statement captured the fundamental disconnect between what the institution thought it was doing and how the decisions felt to those affected by them. The palace believed it was bringing order and clarity to a confusing situation. Harry experienced it as another barrier being erected between him and his family. Inside Buckingham Palace, King Charles was reflecting seriously on questions of legacy. Every decision he made as monarch would be examined by historians for generations to come. He had watched his mother navigate similar challenges with grace and steadiness. Now he faced his own test. The situation with Andrew's disgrace had shown how quickly royal reputations could collapse. The ongoing discussions about Queen Camilla's role and inheritance had revealed how sensitive the public remained to questions of royal privilege. Charles understood that clarity and consistency were essential. "Compassion requires clarity," he reportedly told his advisors. "The crown cannot survive without truth." The message the monarchy was sending went far beyond one family or one set of decisions. It was a statement about how power functions in modern Britain. The old days of absolute royal authority were long gone, but that didn't mean the institution was powerless. Influence could be exercised quietly through careful record-keeping and precise definitions. You didn't need dramatic confrontations or public feuds. You just needed to control the official narrative and maintain the documentation that gave your version of reality the weight of institutional backing. Prince William found himself in an awkward position throughout all of this. He was close enough to understand the institutional perspective and the genuine need for clear policies. But he was also Harry's brother, someone who remembered their shared childhood and understood the pain of family divisions. William emphasized restraint in dealing with the media and avoided making any public statements that might inflame the situation. But privately, he acknowledged that even well-intentioned actions could be profoundly misunderstood when they were broadcast to a global audience without proper context. International news coverage reflected the divided response. The New York Times framed the palace's moves as an example of precision and restraint, modernizing the monarchy without creating unnecessary drama. The Guardian took a more critical view, suggesting that the palace was wielding bureaucracy like a weapon against family members who had challenged institutional control. Commentators from Canada, Australia, and other Commonwealth nations analyzed the delicate balance Charles was trying to achieve, being decisive without being dramatic, firm without creating scandal. Inside the palace archives, staff members worked methodically to transfer all the updated information into official succession records. For them, this was routine professional work, making sure that databases were accurate and documents were properly filed. But they also understood that to the outside world, these updates carried enormous symbolic weight. They represented the monarchy defining itself, drawing lines between who was included and who was excluded, who carried responsibilities and who didn't. As weeks passed and the immediate frenzy of media coverage began to subside, the deeper implications started to become clearer. King Charles had accomplished something significant. He had taken a complicated family situation that was full of ambiguity and painful feelings, and he had imposed institutional order on it. Whether that was an act of necessary leadership or an exercise in cold bureaucratic control depended largely on your perspective. But either way, the monarchy had reasserted its authority to define itself and its members, even in an age when that authority was constantly being questioned and challenged. The story didn't end there, of course. Tensions remained beneath the surface, and whispers continued to circulate about further surprises that might emerge from the palace archives. But for now, a line has been drawn. The crown had acted, not through spectacle or confrontation, but through the quiet power of official documentation. In doing so, it had reminded the world that even in the digital age, even when everyone has a voice and a platform, institutions that control the official records still wield considerable power. The monarchy had redefined itself, one carefully chosen word at a time, and the consequences of those choices would echo through generations to come.